are completely different to the people you would have seen 10 or 15 years ago. The level of dependency is so much higher, and the level of dependency that we can support in the community is so much higher. So we've got to develop our nursing services, our residential, our community-based services, and that has all got to sit within a partnership with the third voluntary and independent sector agencies, because they're innovating at the same time as we are. So I think, you know, going back to your point, how dipping in and dipping out, I think we're very much in. We're very much, you know, want to be a part of how it develops going forward, but we are not the arbiters of all skills and expertise. There's an awful lot of expertise in the independent and third sectors that we need to build into this. It's just about working in partnership going forward.
Jane?
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick point. I can see that Severn View needs to be replaced, but I think that this is a very costly project, and it's going to be using taxpayers' money from every part of Monmouthshire, including the north and every other area. So when this comes back to committee in the future, I would really like to see, as Chair has said, a longer-term strategy and how it fits in the whole strategy for the whole of Monmouthshire. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, Tony, last one.
Just one question. Exactly where is that little bit of land? Is it the bit right at the back of Mytel, which is a little field, a narrow field? I'll show you what I'm thinking.
Could I just... Is this fair on negotiations on that piece of land? Could we email out?
Okay. Yeah.
Could we email out, please, to members the section of land that we are in question here?
Yeah, I'm concerned the fact
it wouldn't be fair, because if negotiations are in place for a section of land, it would be quite easy to find out who's negotiating and prices, etc.
Yeah,
that
but
wouldn't
really,
be fair
Chair,
at the moment on both parts. So email members out just which piece of land it is. I think Tony, you probably know where
really,
it is.
Chair, this should have been in committee in any case.
Probably, yes. Yep. Okay, right. In principle, we're happy with what we got here. Yep. I think we've given it a good airing, and you will be coming back to us in the future with more concrete proposals there. Am I right in saying, though, I believe that we should be looking at a long-term strategy for care in Monmouthshire and who's going to deliver that care? I think that's so important. When we're talking about these numbers, these figures, who knows what this is going to cost at the end? But we are right, we need to move forward. So one of our recommendations could be that actually we need a long-term strategy or a long-term policy on delivering care, this kind of specialist care within Monmouthshire, and whoever the partners will be. Things change on probably on a yearly basis. The funding doesn't change because it's all going to cost money. It just depends how much it's going to cost. Are we happy to put that in some kind of recommendation within our findings from today, that we recommend that we need a long-term vision and a view of delivering care within Monmouthshire? Yeah, Roger?
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Maybe that could be fed back as to see what's going to happen in the detailed business case that's being worked up. Knowing how we feel about it, it would be rather useful if some of that, or if not all of that information, was taken care of in that detailed business plan.
Honestly, I have many people asking me about respite. They can't get respite. It's fully booked. You made it quite clear here with it. What we have at present, it's virtually impossible for some people to have respite. But that's just a small piece of the jigsaw with all this. But I think we as a council should be looking at sitting down as a council in the short term and discussing long-term strategy of delivering care within Monmouthshire, and who's going to deliver it. Are we going to take an example with partners in delivering it, or are we going to look at the third sector and even the fourth sector? Who knows? But I think we need to have that conversation, all 43 of us, in what the long-term solution is here for the next decade at least. I have Councillor Smith, you haven't spoken, so I'll allow you to come in.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairman, because I found it very interesting to listen. The office has covered a lot of the points that interesting. You're feeling that you're not moving towards the future. In the willingness to work in partnership with independent providers, I think that is the forward thinking and the forward looking. It's interesting to listen to members' comments as well. This is a replacement proposal at the moment, but the thinking is there of sort of, at least that was my perception as the discussion proceeded and the officer explained, that you are looking to the future as to how the programme rolls forward. This is a replacement for a facility that I know that I visited. And yes, it has gone past its sell-by date now. We need as a council to have the right priorities and to put our finances where those priorities are. I think the thinking is there. It's an openness that I welcome with the officers. Well, my interpretation of what you've said. And also, Councillor Easton made reference to the Inire and Bevan University Health Board initiative, well, reconfiguration of their services. You're obviously aware of that and you're well involved with that, because I wondered what the knock-on effects would be there. So I think the thinking is there. What I would welcome as one of the 43 members of this council is the opportunity to be regularly updated and to perhaps have some input into what is being considered for the future as to where I as a member think we should be going. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Could we be clear then? We're behind the principle, and we want you to go out there and continue and get your final papers. But we as a council, though, we're going to take the lead in primary care here, especially with advancing this project. But do you believe that we should actually be looking at having something in place for long-term for primary care for everyone? Yeah? Happy with that? Okay. Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, we'll just have a 2-minute break and then we'll come back in then, okay?
Yeah.
Could you just
Peter.
introduce yourselves, ladies and gents, when you
Yeah,
start your
sure.
reports? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Finnis and I'm the Senior Housing Support Officer with Monmouthshire County Council's Housing Support Gateway. We are a service staffed with 7.2 full-time equivalent staff and funded by Supporting People. Our principal remit is the prevention of homelessness. That remit has many aspects, and we do our work in conjunction with our colleagues in the Council's Housing Options team, with our support providers and other statutory and voluntary sector agencies. In recent weeks, we will have been aware via press and news reports that housing and homelessness are issues high on the political and social agenda. And synchronised with those reports is the recent budget statement from Welsh Government, which raises questions about the future funding and structures of homelessness services across Wales. So how does homelessness affect us in Monmouthshire? Well, certainly the scale and volume of rough sleeping, sofa surfing and housing problems are not as prevalent in Monmouthshire as is evident in our urban cities and urban neighbours. But many problems do exist in Monmouthshire, not always obvious, not always at the extreme end of the homelessness scale. Certainly the scale is different, yet proportional, and for each individual affected, the disruption, anxiety and impact is personal and significant, whether you are facing those problems in Cardiff or Chepstow or Langby-Hangle, Crewcorney. But we have not been complacent about these issues and how they affect the people in Monmouthshire. Daily experience reminds us of our good fortune to live and work in this county, but good fortune should not be taken for granted, and problems do exist that impact upon the individual and the wider community. A very proactive funding approach from supporting people has in recent years supported the development of the Gateway and its central role in coordinating applications, undertaking assessments, reviewing and expediting service delivery, which has resulted in the Monmouthshire Gateway being a model that has been emulated across the sector. For those working in the sector, we are only too aware of the demand. Since the formation of the Gateway in 2005, our statistics have seen a marked year-on-year increase in respect of applications for support. In our first year, 2005, we received 621 referrals, and by 2016-17, that number had increased to 1378, and projected figures for this current year predict a further increase. All applications are actioned. We attempt to contact all applicants. We have developed our own ethos within the team, and that is evidenced by our unofficial team motto, that is, we opt in. I would much rather that we contact all applicants, even if on initial reading they do not seem appropriate for our service, or if ultimately they do not need us. I would much rather that we intervene, then at least we're in a position to provide people with advice, information, or appropriate signposting. We operate a well-oiled machine, and all our support providers work at full capacity. Coping with this demand has been addressed through introducing a variety of additional support services, both generic and specialist services. For example, services specialising in mental health, domestic abuse, and services for young people. And as necessary over the years, we have adapted our processes in order to meet that demand. So far, this has allowed us to stay ahead of the curve and maintain as efficient a service as is possible. Efficiency and promptness are central to our function, and our effectiveness in responding to applications has not so far been affected detrimentally by the demand. However, trends cannot be ignored, and I refer to my first slide here, and waiting lists are a current concern, as we have recently moved from a situation of having a negligible and quite envious waiting list with a relatively short wait time to, as of Friday last week, having 65 people on our wait list to start support, which means that even those in priority or crisis need cannot always be started immediately. We have seen in recent years the expansion of the Gateway and the expansion of our responses that we have at our disposal with which to intervene and respond. We have introduced within the team a project known as Early Intervention, whereby each assessment officer within the team also undertakes direct support work. This is a dual aspect service, as we are able to respond to both crisis situations, for example, where the Gateway will seek to address any immediate support issues prior to referring on to a suitable support provider, and also allows us to intervene where there is the potential for quick wins. For example, the team can undertake immediate visits, assisting with one-off issues, and prevent the need for a person to proceed to a full service. Key to the success of the Gateway is our relationship with our stakeholders, be it support providers or statutory and voluntary agencies. But most important is the relationship with our clients. We're a team with a lot of skills and experience, and as a team, I will admit, we are not very hot on strategy, but we are hot operationally and very effective on the front line. I'm proud to lead a team who is sensible, responsive, non-prejudicial, and most importantly, kind, and who truly reflect the principles of public service. A main focus during the past year has been the introduction of 2 new services which align to the requirements of the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act 2014, and these support the new approach of place-based working. They are the Housing and Wellbeing Service and the Social Inclusion Service, and the Council's Housing Support Gateway has become the access route for these pilot projects. Working in close relationship or partnership with colleagues in social care, supporting people, and with existing Gateway providers, The focus is to provide person-centred service delivery through working collaboratively with people who live and work locally. In effect, the new service provides easy access to advice, information and assistance, with the right people being available at the right time in the right place. Both services have been allowed and encouraged to adopt a flexible approach to what constitutes well-being. And through conversations with the people seeking support, it is our job to determine what matters to those individuals and how best to provide assistance to help people achieve their goals and find solutions that are important to them, and importantly, to prevent them needing to take the next step, which was often entry into a full-scale involvement with social care services. Demand for this service has been exceptional, and since July 2016, 325 people have been supported. Not all people that we work with are rough sleeping, and I refer to our definitions of areas of need as from our Welsh Government guidance. But the people we work with, they are at a point where things have happened, often situations out of their control, and perhaps reaching an acceptance that they need to deal with that situation, be it related to domestic abuse, family breakdown, job loss, low income, poor mental health and poor physical health. Many factors can impact on one's ability to sustain or acquire accommodation. Some people need only a little support to create some stability and avoid an escalation of the issues. Some have more deep-rooted issues and require a greater level of support and intervention. We spend a lot of time collecting a great range of data, which identifies gender, age, geographical breakdown, areas of lead need, outcomes and value for money. This is necessary in order to determine areas where need is not being met. For example, groups who are less inclined to seek support, or areas where services need to be remodelled. However, as important as the numbers are, so are the words, and feedback we receive from the people we support. In closing, I leave you with some stories of how the provision of support has impacted and made a positive difference to people's lives in Monmouthshire. Some interventions are simple, some are more complex, and some are unusual. A simple case study with Mr. B. An elderly gentleman had been discharged from hospital to his private rented accommodation, which he soon found to be unsuitable for his needs. He lived in a first-floor flat, and he found it difficult to use the stairs, and the location was very removed from local amenities. Mr. B wasn't aware that he was entitled to access other forms of housing, so following discussions with Mr. B and his family, he expressed an interest in seeking accommodation in sheltered housing. The support worker assisted Mr. B to complete a home search application, and he was also assisted to complete a welfare form in order to improve his banding. Mr. B bid on a property, and following his first bid, he was offered new accommodation and is now living happily in sheltered accommodation in Usk. He is reported to be very happy with this outcome, and following resettlement support, Mr. B has been able to continue to live independently. Case study 2, more complex. Sally, who works with our Housing and Wellbeing Service, holds a drop-in surgery at a local library, and a young man, Mr. C, we call him Chris, came in. Chris had been living with his mother, but due to her own mental health issues, she had told him he had to leave, so making Chris homeless. He told Sally he had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. Sally, using her local contacts, was able during the course of one day to access a room for Chris in a shared house, and he was able to move in on the same day. Sally provided further support to Chris as he was having difficulties in claiming benefits. Sally organised his applications, although it became a lengthy process, taking several months to resolve, but ultimately getting a good outcome. Chris was placed in the sick-related group of Universal Credit and received a substantial back payment of benefits, which meant he was able to address debt and financial issues. During this time, Chris suffered a deterioration in his mental health, and Sally worked closely with Chris in order for him to engage with his GP and mental health services. Chris is a very talented artist, and with support from Sally, he is engaged with a community art gallery, and pieces of his artwork have been accepted for display. Chris still has bad days. He aspires to one day having his own place, but generally he feels he is now better prepared for the future. He told Sally that without her support, he would not be as well and not be as settled as he is today. Case study 3 is a bit unusual, and the support was provided by one of our team within the in-house prevention intervention service. A few weeks ago, a report was received by Monmouthshire County Council coming via a homeless app, and the report was ultimately forwarded to housing. The report had come from a member of the public expressing concerns for the well-being of a man sleeping rough in Abergavenny town centre. The report stated that the man was sleeping rough in an alleyway near some shops and near some flats. He had no coat or sleeping bag, and he was using cardboard to light fires in the alleyway, and was also using the alleyway as a toilet. It is not usual for us to contact people without their agreement. Nobody had spoken to the man. Nobody knew of his plans or his reasons for being in Abergavenny. We didn't even know if he wanted help. Yet concerns for his well-being were now in the public domain, and the most obvious solution was to try to find him. So I asked my colleague Carl to take a trip to Abergavenny to try and locate the man who we can call Billy. A local church had advised us that Billy had been to see them, and they had sent him to the one-stop shop. And it was sitting on a bench near the one-stop shop that Carl found Billy. Billy was very dishevelled and dirty. His clothes were badly torn. His trousers were torn from ankle to crutch. He had no possessions, no money, and he was very hungry. As it turned out, Billy did not want to be in Abergavenny. The story was he'd attended an appointment at Neville Hall and not actually been able to make it back home, and was stranded. We don't know the full details of that story, but he was prevented from returning to his hometown. Billy also stated that he had recently become homeless, and again, we don't know the full story of that. Billy said he had no wish to remain in Abergavenny or in Monmouthshire, so the simplest solution was to offer him a lift back to his hometown, which is some half-hour's drive away from Abergavenny and in another local county area. Carl bought Billy a couple of tuna baguettes, coffee, gave him £5 as the gentleman had no money. Billy asked to be dropped off near his town centre of his hometown, said he would go to a family member and sort things out from there. Billy went on his way, but wearing Carl's jeans, and Carl drove home in his underpants. Apparently, something to do with Billy's trousers being very torn and Carl not wanting Billy to be arrested for indecency on top of everything else that he'd been through. I thank you for the time in allowing me to tell you about the Gateway. We do good work, and I mean that sincerely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
I just hope that gentleman didn't get a puncher on the way home as well.
No, that's exactly what he said to me when I ran.
Been there, done that.
I don't break down or get stopped by the police.
Right, any questions? Jane.
Can I just thank you for that excellent presentation and obviously recognise the very important work that you and your team do. What I would just like to ask is, do you think looking forward with things that are going to happen in the future with the tolls on the bridges going and prices of property, both rented property and private property increasing, and also, you know, with some of the other things that might start happening, for example, interest rate rises, do you see your service becoming under increased pressure in the future?
It seems that it doesn't take many changes in the structure of our society or changes in how things are working, that there is some impact for someone. And sometimes there's good impacts for people, but very often these impacts are bad. I mean, I'm sure Ian will give you a more detailed answer in terms of the housing market in Monmouthshire, but getting affordable housing in Monmouthshire is difficult enough in whatever circumstances, and especially if you're low income. And obviously what you're saying is there will be people with good jobs who can then see Monmouthshire as an attractive place to live and maybe forcing out other people or becoming unaffordable for those who are already there. And I think that would be a quite realistic consequence if we were planning ahead for what might happen there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you want to take on anything about the housing sector itself.
Yeah, I'd agree with Tracy. I think it would, those sort of changes, we'd expect that to put an increased pressure on general affordability, which may manifest itself in various different ways, but it certainly won't help. Certainly.
You came to us last meeting, Ian, didn't you? And you said the problems were going to arise with the other sector of the housing, going from for the homeless side of it into private. That will have the balance here then, won't it? Because we won't have the properties then where we can accommodate people who are homeless
Yeah, what
Is that gonna have a major impact now on where we are with having the balance here with people's needs?
Yeah, we would expect to. I mean, what we're finding is that private sector accommodation, the market rents in Monmouthshire are typically above housing benefit levels anyway. We get a lot of approaches for homelessness, and income is often at the core of that. And as part of our toolkit, Tracy's team is part of the toolkit, where somebody comes in with a homelessness issue, and we do a dual referral. So the options team will pick it up, and Tracy's team will pick it up as well. So we're trying to tackle things from as many different angles as well. And I say, affordability is right at the heart of many applications that we get.
Ruth?
Thank you. Good morning, Tracy, Ian. With planning, though, you very rarely see you get conversions for barns and all that sort of thing, because of what Monmouthshire is, very much that sort of area. But we very rarely see a change to multiple occupational housing. We do get small ones, sort of one house into two or something, but not for multiple people to be living in one house. Have you noticed that you don't see much of that in Monmouthshire?
Yeah, there's not a great deal, and we're, the housing options team. You're aware of the shared housing scheme. We're probably probably provides the main number of units in Monmouthshire. I know that housing associations are beginning to think about it, but again, even then, I think it's more. It's pretty on a low level, and quite. Monmouthshire Housing, for example, are running a bit of a pilot at the moment, where they're looking to use 2-bedroom flats as shared units. But I say it's such early days, and I don't think it's going to make a great deal of difference in the short term.
Okay. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. Just a quick aside, really. We've obviously just had the National Rough Sleeper fortnight. I know rates of rough sleeping in the county have been historically low. Have you seen any increase on sort of indicative figures over the last couple of weeks?
Interestingly, we have. Is what I think the figures relate to perhaps one specific incident where there were 4 gentlemen sleeping in tents in Chepstow. It was unusual, and it started with one gentleman, and then 3 other people joined him. And then obviously we had the gentleman in Abergavenny, and we know anecdotally of people across the county. And the rough sleeper count is taking place now in the next week or so. And I would say we probably will catch more people this year if we look in the right places, more than perhaps we've had in previous years. I mean, it's a very random hit one night in certain areas, and Monmouthshire's a big place and people could be tucked away anywhere. But if we had to pinpoint people, yes, we have had an increase in that, specifically because of the situation with the Chepstow campers, which is probably dispersed. I think there's only one camper left there at the moment. Yeah, but it was a little bit of a busy couple of weeks with such activity, which was unusual for us. Obviously we're not like Cardiff or Newport where it becomes commonplace. It's different here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any more?
Just were there any underpinning themes between? I know you've obviously alluded to the issue in Chepstow. I'm from Chepstow. but were there any sort of interlinking themes between, you know, with their mental ill health, or was there was an issue of affordability, or was it for some it can be a matter of choice? I mean, you know, because of chaotic lifestyles and various things, family breakdown, sometimes the decision to sleep rough is to avoid perhaps tackling another issue.
Simple answer is it was all those things, a mix of all those things. The first gentleman was an older gentleman with a long history of perhaps a chaotic lifestyle, and the other 3 people who joined the camp were younger, in their 20s, and from difficult family backgrounds. And for the one gentleman, the situation was resolved, be it in a very strange way, in that he ended up breaking his leg and was in hospital and was later rehoused. The other 2 gentlemen are still with us on support, but probably not so easy to contact at the moment, so we've still got them open. But the other gentleman, I think, without saying too much, was offered places, wasn't he? But it became a question of what he wanted to accept and what was on offer. So I think he stayed put at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. Any more questions? No? Okay, Tracy, thanks for that. And thank you to your team as well for all their hard work. And I noticed there's £220,000 worth, £211,000 worth of grant. So you must come to us if we find that grant's being cut or whatever. It may be increased, so you can do a lot more work with...
times ahead.
They are worrying times, but please bear that in mind, okay? All right, thank you both. Right.
Good morning. My name is Steve Griffiths, and I work for the Housing Department and the Strategy and Policy Officer. I have 2 reports to before you today. One is the Gypsy and Traveller allocation policy, pitch allocation policy, and the other is the Severe Weather Emergency Protocol for rough sleepers, otherwise known as SWEP. But the first, it'll be the Gypsy and Traveller pitch allocation policy. Now, basically, this has come before you. It's a draft in form at the moment. It's looking for basically your thoughts on it as well, and questions you may have. So before it goes out for consultation. We have a Gypsy and Traveller Forum that has met in the past. That was set up to look at our Gypsy and Traveller accommodation needs, which has now been adopted by the council, and we hope to put this draft before them for consultation. Why do we require this? Well, first and foremost, there is an expectation from Welsh Government now that all local authorities throughout Wales have a Gypsy and Traveller pitch allocation policy in place, especially where there's been an identified need. And as I just alluded to, we did a Gypsy and Traveller needs assessment back in 2015, and there was that identified a need for 8 pitches. That GTA, Gypsy and Traveller needs assessment, that was conducted during the summer and early autumn of 2015, and it was agreed by Welsh Government in December 2016. Having identified the reason why we need a Gypsy and Traveller allocation policy is that having identified a need and a provision for pitches, the policy aims to offer then those pitches to those families in the greatest need, and is in line with our home search allocation policy for bricks and mortar. It's there to ensure as well that the allocation of pitches is clear, fair and consistent, so there's a transparency behind who we place on those pitches. The allocation policy is open to Gypsy and Traveller families, and if you look within the policy, there's a definition as laid down by the Welsh Government. Once all Gypsy and Traveller families will have to complete an application form. That application form basically will determine their need, and then from that need they will be placed very similar again to the bricks and mortar, into one of 5 bands. Band 1 will be their exceptional need, coming down to band 5, which will be, in all intents and purposes, a no need. And well, that's basically what the allocation policy is about, is having a process in place so that we are able to allocate in the future. We don't have any provision at the moment, but it's there ready in the future to offer places to Gypsy and Traveller families in the greatest need.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I just ask one question before we proceed? With Brexit, will we have to revisit this policy, the Welsh Government, on the issue of people coming in from other countries then? Because under European probably legislation, it's probably what we run under here. I noticed applicants who are subject to immigration control.
Yes.
Yes, most probably applicants are within the EU who we have to probably look at with that control coming into Wales. With them not being part, or us not being part of the EU, then will we have to re-look at this policy, because there'll be different rules and regulations, won't there?
There will be. And I don't know what everyone else what those new rules and regulations are, but as it currently stands, we work under the existing rules. They may well be assimilated into new rules, or they may well be new rules.
Because like Southern Ireland, a lot of travellers do travel from Southern Ireland a lot.
Yes, they come.
That'll be a different ball game then for people travelling through Wales possibly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, so in light of what comes from Brexit,
yeah,
I should imagine there'll be lots of policies that will be
have to revisit.
Yeah, even probably the homelessness law that relies a lot on EU.
Okay. Strong Communities did look at this policy 2 years ago. No, a bit less than that. Roger, Tony, was you part of that one? You were, weren't you? Yeah. So we have been through this.
Oh, the GT, yes, the needs assessment.
Needs assessment, yes. Yeah. Okay, any questions? Roger, and then Jane.
Yeah, I think you've already mentioned this, Stephen, but just for clarification, do we have 8 pitches? And I think you said we haven't got any.
No, we don't have any pitches identified at the moment.
What are the implications of that if we're supposed to have 8? And what's over a 5-year period mean? I mean, are we supposed to have 8 forevermore sort of thing, or
no,
8 this year and 4 next year and 2?
No, the needs assessment was a needs assessment over the next 5 years. Nice. And that ends in 2021, I believe, and it follows the what's the LDP. Yeah, and it follows the LDP. We are supposed to conduct then another in 2021, and conduct another assessment to identify any new need. Now the policy and the waiting list policy, now if it's in place, that will become part of our needs assessment.
Just coming back, Chair, so we're 3 years into the LDP and we haven't got any pitches. What sort of sanctions can be thrown at us, if you know what I mean? We're 3 years down the line and we haven't done anything.
I wouldn't know exactly what sanctions Wales can do, the Welsh Government, but I know that they have the power to, to force local governments to act. Now, what that means is in reality, I don't know. I'm sorry, but they have the power under existing law now to force local authorities to act on their needs assessment.
Can I just be clear, Roger? What he's saying is with 3 years left of the existing LDP, because 212.
214 it came in.
What did we agree in 212?
March or April 214, and it's now 3 years beyond that. We haven't done anything. That's what I'm saying.
Ruth?
But is it a different issue, really, with people that are travelling through, that come to different areas of the country? Monmouthshire has not got what we call a typical agricultural or horticultural need for travelling families for hop picking, soft fruit picking, which is what a lot of travelling people tend to follow. So with our, we have got gypsies living in Monmouthshire. There's one not so far away that was won by an appeal. They live just outside Usk. But there seems to be different criteria for gypsy travellers to what sort of live there for the summer, then they go into housing in the winter. A lot of ours do. Well, we haven't got a lot. But is it different for people who want to live the nomadic sort of way of life and live here on a pitch that's allocated for them and then perhaps move to Herefordshire for soft fruit picking or whatever later? Is there two different criteria of need for a site?
No, I don't believe there is two particular needs for a site. Because it was a small sample that we were able to interview for our GTA, we were able to build up a rapport with all of them, and it became evident that lots of them would prefer not to be in bricks and mortar, that they would prefer to live in a mobile home on a pitch in Monmouthshire itself. And yes, if they wanted to travel, then they would be able to have that, be able to travel to look for work elsewhere, or just to travel as part of their nomadic lifestyle, but return to Monmouthshire. But they were unable to do so because obviously there's no pitch provision at the moment. But the way I see it is that they're quite clear that they would like to have a mobile home within Monmouthshire and not live in bricks and mortar. One of the terms that was mentioned quite frequently was this physical aversion to bricks and mortar.
Okay, I've got Councillor Jane Pratt and then Councillor Martin Grucott.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was confused as well, as my experience is in Dorset, where this was a very big issue for us, especially as we had an annual steam fair. And I think it's very important that we have these 8 pitches as a minimum. Totally support that. But if we did have a group moving through the area, travelling through, do we have a particular spot that we would direct them to that would have sort of facilities for them, or does that not exist?
No, a site like that doesn't exist in Monmouthshire at the moment, and that will be addressed though. I think they believe they call them transit sites. That's going to be addressed more on a regional basis, which would include, I think, most of the 5 local authorities in South East Wales sometime in the future.
Yeah, we've used the authorities around us, haven't we, to cater for that? Am I right in saying that?
To be honest, I'm not too sure on that.
I remember. I remember we said like Blaenau Gwent has a site which is adjoining with Monmouthshire up in Bryn Mawr area, and then we used the site, let's say, down in Newport. So there are adjoining sites. So I think there was some. Memory serves me, there was something within the guidelines allowed you to actually use the neighbouring authorities if you didn't have something yourself. Am I right in saying that?
Okay.
I
don't know about that.
Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a plea for some joined-up thinking, really. I welcome the report, but would make the comment that very often travellers have quite large families with a lot of young children. And I would urge you to ensure that there is full collaborative working there with those traveller support education staff to ensure that when a site like this is established, there is provision for traveller education. And I remember from another existence of mine many years ago, it's very, very difficult often, the nature of travelling families, to get them into school. And I would guess it's probably the Gwent Ethnic Minority Service that we contribute to as an authority. They will have traveller education staff, and it's just joined up thinking that I'm asking about to ensure that their kids get the best possible education.
And that particular group is on our Gypsy and Traveller Forum.
Okay. Ian?
Can I just add, just in relation to your point there, Councillor, we work very closely with the South East Wales, I can't remember what they're called, Equalities Council, and there's actually a gypsy that's employed by them. So they advised us with the Gypsy and Traveller assessment, and any processes that we continue to go will always involve them as an initial sounding board. But I just wanted to make the point about obviously we've been talking about the 8 pitches, which has been identified by the assessment, but that's not necessarily, they don't have to be necessarily local authority pitches. Some of the people that we interviewed, quite happy to go and purchase a piece of land and establish their own pitches. So obviously, in terms of them looking to the local authority, it'd be through the planning processes that they'd be looking for assistance. But so I think as we sit here, it would probably be a bit of a mix, really, in terms of that sort of provision. Because certainly some of the people that we interviewed, we don't think they'd be in a position to acquire their own pitches, and would look to the local authority for assistance in that regard.
Could I just be clear then, Roger? You made the point of an application which I believe went to appeal, and the appeal was won not very long ago. Would that count as our 8 pitches? So if it was for 6, does that mean then we're looking at a smaller site, perhaps long term, or does it not count? I just need to be clear.
I think there's probably a debate to be had on that. Our initial anticipation is it would, and we would hope it would, but whether Welsh Government would take a different view on that, I don't know. I think the point that Councillor Harris brought out about expectation and whether WAG could, what view they would take if we didn't do anything. Again, the experience that Steve and I are getting, and the messages are loud and clear. This is a statutory responsibility that you do need to take seriously, and they do expect us to take it seriously. They're in quite regular contact with Steve personally, asking for updates and progress. So I think they would take a dim view if we didn't progress anything.
Okay, that's made it clear then, hasn't it? Right, any more questions? Val?
Chairman, you are actually expecting the results of an appeal sometime in the very near future, as a group have actually taken the steps forward that you said. They have purchased their own ground and they have established their own dwellings there. I find it quite... Well, I understood travellers were travellers, that you moved from site to site and location to location. Now, the situation that I'm referring to is certainly not. It's a static residential site that's just there, and it takes no account of our planning policy that applies to everybody else. But what intrigues me, somebody was telling me the other day that within England it's a different definition. Travellers are literally travellers. They move from location to location, not as in this situation with this appeal that we're waiting for, which is a static, solid, permanent camp, establishment. So is that true, that travelling with travellers, definition of travellers within England means that you move from location to location with your home, not static sites as we seem to be saying in Wales? And also, it's interesting because the other appeal that has come forward and been successful, that actually sees us now allocating 8 sites, 8 plots or whatever we call them, outside Usk. So I'm getting thoroughly confused, quite frankly, but that bearing in England that travelling means literally travelling, not static homes. And so is it the same definition here? or not?
Jane, do you want to just, I think you may know a little bit more.
Yeah, from my experience, and certainly on the council that I worked on before, we had a site that was for the travelling community, but it was for static mobile homes. And this particular site is people that do not wish to live in a house as we would know it, bricks and mortar, but it was an allocated piece of land where they could live in the way they wish to live in very, very smart mobile homes. Some of them were really fantastic. But that is their lifestyle choice. And as a council, we did accommodate them, and there was somewhere for them to be able to carry out that lifestyle choice. We also had other sites which we had to allocate. We had land which had to be available for the travelling community to use as they pass through. So I'd see those as completely different issues.
Yeah, there's two separate issues there. I think you made it very clear, though, Ian, that whatever we've allowed or whatever went to appeal in Usk, and they won the appeal, it still doesn't tick the box for Monmouthshire that we're providing a site, not the private sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, I say there's no compulsion for the local authority to provide a public site, albeit I think in reality, we would need to. But say it could well be that some of the private provision will help address some of those that pitch need. And as you were talking, I just suddenly remembered that we are actively liaising with one household at the moment. Steve's been in touch about a planning permission arrangement, which again, if that all goes through, that would meet some of the need identified in the GTA.
Okay. It just seems, for me, it seems though sites are being brought forward, whether it's private. Well, it's got to be private sites because we haven't got a site and we haven't brought one forward. So if that need is, let's say, small and the private sites are taking the need, is it not our due responsibility and our duty to provide a moving site, i.e. drop in and drop out site where they come and they can move on, instead of a residential site, same as Councillor Pratt said, is the council provided all the or gave permission for all the other sites, the mobile home sites, but actually the in and out site, i.e. You go and you stay a maximum of 2 weeks or whatever, is it not the duty of this council to do that? Or are you saying it may be, but because we're fulfilling the duty of giving the smaller sites of residential, we're covering ourselves? Because it seems to be, when you do talk about this kind of need, it seems to me as though people, not on my doorstep, and when we sat through our meetings with the travelling people and the people from the councils, etc., the travelling councils, etc., it wasn't the case. You know, I mean, but the Welsh Government is saying you need to provide a site as Monmouthshire. Find a site and do it quickly. Is that where we are really? No.
Yes, we've identified a need, and I say part of that is we consider that there is a need for some public provision, and we're obviously in discussion with planning colleagues around that. But I say it's not all about public provision, and I say obviously the current planning permissions may support that, and we've got one pending that which, if that goes through again, that will contribute to that need.
Okay.
With regards to the transit issue, though, that is an all Wales issue, and all Wales and Welsh Government realise that it is, and they'll be looking at that as a whole to determine where transit sites ought to be. That's the next step for the Welsh Government with the transit sites. But
okay. Jane?
Can I just say, and I think it would be much better to identify that transit site that was acceptable to the Gypsy and Travelling community and that was, provided them with what they required, and that was in a place that we were happy with, rather than the alternative, which would cause a lot more problems.
Yeah, that's a valid point, and when we identify that site, is open it up, and we proceed with it. So we've got recommendations 2, 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Are we all happy to proceed to consider how the council engages with the Gypsy traveller community and how the council provides its statutory response to addressing the identified needs? 2.2, to consider the first draft Gypsy travel pitch allocations policy prior to consultation and make comments. That's in Appendix 1. To receive a further report following the consultation. We all happy with them recommendations? Yep. Can we move them? Move. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay. And you're with us for the next one? Yep. Okay. No problem.
I thought my voice would have been loud enough. Okay, thank you. Again, this is another Welsh Government expectation that provision is put in place to help rough sleepers, especially during times of severe weather. It basically formalises as well what we're currently doing, although historically we've never had many rough sleepers in the past to deal with, but it puts into place something that we're sort of currently doing. It's really open as well. It's slightly different to the way other aspects of homelessness works, in as much as this is open to everybody. It doesn't matter what their status is in terms of their immigration status. It's open to anyone that actually happens to be sleeping rough on the streets, and it's designed, in its brutal honesty, to save life. That's what it's in there for. It is in some areas, especially in England, and that they've limited to cold weather. Again, there's an expectation that in Wales that we would slightly broaden it out, not just to include extreme cold weather, but to include extreme weather, whether it's wind or rain. Now, the issue around slight difference and awkwardness when you come to trying to define then other extreme weathers, because it's a bit more subjective than you would do if you were saying extreme cold weather, because it's extreme cold weather. It's a agreed principle. It's 3 or more nights at 0 degrees below. But with regards to other forms of extreme weather, we're looking at weather extremes of about red or amber or red categories, and it's basically to remove off the street homelessness, place them into B&B during the term that the severe weather is due to last, and then give them ongoing support after the period of when they've been placed into B&B. But it's mainly for the protection of life and limb.
Like last night.
Yeah.
Does it have to be a certain degree below 3?
No, but last night is a one-off. It has to be.
It's exceptional, right?
Yeah, we would look daily at the on the meteorological site at the weather forecast, and if it's going to be for 3 days or more, minimum of 3 days below or 0 or below, then we would then place the protocol. It would trigger the protocol, and then we would inform our providers and if the protocol is kicked in. The police, the homeless charities, that if they identify any rough sleepers, then the protocol has been activated.
Okay, any more questions? Jane?
Can I just ask, is there an opportunity for them to seek sort of medical help or to deal with any other issues that may arise?
Yes, once they've come into coming through the process then, and then we would then look and identify any support needs that are required and any further need after that, because we would try to limit and work with them so that they don't go back onto the street. So that we would try to signpost them to whatever services are out there to mitigate then.
Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Steve, you underlining the resource implications, that the cost per head per night. What's the overall budget head though for that particular? Is it a few thousand, several thousand, or does it fall under? Well, it will, as a bell line, probably fall under you've got funding from Housing and Communities Cost Centre, but is there a sort of?
Yeah, well, we have a general fund for homelessness, and it would fall within that funding for homelessness. And I would imagine it's going to be met from we place families into B&B, not regular, but when we have to, and it'll be met out of that budget account.
What is that roughly? Do you know?
I can ask that.
It's about I think it's between 60 and 70,000 at the moment. So.
Roger, do you want to speak?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's an eminently sensible protocol, there's no doubt about it, and very comprehensive. The only thing I'd like a bit of information on is in 5.2, the housing options team will manage the emergency accommodation, and they can be contacted on 01633 644 644. Now, out of office hours as well. As far as I'm aware, it gets to 5 o'clock and 644 644 says, sorry, come back tomorrow. How does that work? Because that's my having attempted to get through to officers before, he shuts down at 4:30 or 5. Can you check that that actually is correct?
It should be the emergency number that we will check it, obviously, but the emergency number that we're giving out is 644 644. And then they should be then directed, or we will contact. We always have somebody on duty, and then that person would then contact whoever's rung in. So there should be no problems getting hold of somebody out of hours. We'll double check when we go back. But obviously, if you do experience any problems, let me know.
I think in winter, Roger, am I right in saying this, that when you do ring the number, emergency number comes up, then directing you? It might do now. It may be implemented now with the clocks moving, who knows. But we have identification, you've just said, of people who are rough sleeping, who are out there within Monmouthshire anyway. We have a rough idea who they are, and generally we'll probably look after them the best we can. We're not talking about hundreds here, are we? We're talking a small handful of people.
No, and I think the key point with this protocol is that it would obviously anyone could self-refer in, but we'll be liaising with agencies. So, for example, I'm working quite closely at the moment with a group of churches in Monmouth, and I know there's one or two people in Monmouth who are rough sleeping, but again, it comes back to that scenario where it's generally by choice. I think one of the things that since we introduced the shared housing service, we've been able to accommodate people who otherwise would have rough slept. So we've not eliminated it, but it's certainly reduced the likelihood of it.
Okay, I have one more question, Louise.
Yeah, it's just a query. Why 3 nights? I know I wouldn't want to sleep one night in the cold, let alone 2 or 3. Is this a query, really, where the 3 comes from and how that decision was made?
It seems that's a standard practice that, in reality, I have no idea why the 3 is chosen. It's just standard practice.
Ruth?
I do believe that in extreme cold weather, even if you're in a household, I believe after 3 days you can claim benefits or something for an elderly person. There's so many days of cold weather or something.
You'll have
I
Mrs.
know a
Alf on the
certain
phone
number
tomorrow,
of days or something. It has to
Put the heating
go
on,
below
yeah.
a certain temperature.
I think the as Steve says, I think it's like the industry standard. But I mean, I think you make a fair point. One night's one night really, and I think we're just trying to, obviously we're formalising this, and obviously there'll be scope to review it and change it if needs be. But it's creating a bit of a starting point. But equally, obviously, there's we've got to manage this. We've got to establish procedures around this. So it's it's a bit of a starting point at this stage, and then we'll go from there really.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Woodhouse.
Just clarification, really. It's the timing I'm looking at. The accommodation will be confirmed before midday. So obviously, if the forecast is predicted before midday, then accommodation could be looked for. But if suddenly about 5 o'clock you realise the temperature is going to drop, would accommodation be available? How much accommodation do you think would be available at short notice?
Well, we will be looking at monitoring the weather forecast on a daily basis. I would. I can't envisage a situation where we wouldn't know if the temperature was going to drop that quickly. To be fair, but certainly if it did drop that and a new 3-day period, was identified, then it would kick in from then. So if it was after midday, we would have to deal with it then and inform the local agencies of that. It's been triggered. It's not set in stone. But we would generally look first thing in the morning to see what was happening that day and the next 3 days.
Thank you. But my sort of worry is that would there be accommodation available?
Sourcing B&B, we have sources. We have sources of B&B. That is not easy to source as well. B&B are establishments that will offer B&B are quite limited, but then that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be trying in county or out of county to source that B&B. But there isn't a great deal of B&B out there. On an honesty, maybe Ian, you could.
Yeah, I think that the reality is that the team are used to arranging B&B very quickly, and I say we'll get phone calls, out of hours saying that accommodation's needed, ASAP, and they'll organise it. And as Steve said, sometimes, most of the time, it's okay, but there will be those times and occasions when it is a bit of a nightmare trying to identify somewhere. And of course, we haven't, because the authority hasn't got its own accommodation apart from our shared housing. It can be difficult, but most of the time it's not a problem, and the team are well used to dealing with it.
Can I just ask a question? Authorities around us, have they adopted this policy? I'll tell you the reason why I'm just going to ask the question. Because you could end up with 10 in Chepstow Park when it starts to get colder, thinking, well, Monmouthshire, we do all right. They got the Ritz up there. Let's go up to Monmouthshire and we'll get whatever cold payment there. They'll put us in some nice B&Bs up there. And they've come from another area where actually they don't get treated like that. You see my point? So authorities around us, do they actually implemented this policy, let's say in England, over the bridge there, or in Blaenau Gwent, or in Caerphilly, or whatever? My point I'm making is they may find Monmouthshire attractive because we put them in the Ritz. Yeah.
Well, at the moment in England, it is. I think all authorities now have got them and have done for some time. So in terms of for Wales, we're running a little bit behind the rest of the UK, or some parts of the UK. With regards to Wales in itself, I have to be honest, I know of one place. And I know that within the, there's a homelessness network, and this is something that they're bringing to the network now of authorities that are actually implementing SWEP over the coming months. And I know that we are asked on a regular basis where we are with ours at the moment. But I only know of one so far in Wales.
Okay, we'll see. Right, I've got no more questions. We've got recommendations 2. It looks like you need to implement this quite quickly as well for this winter. So we have consider the implications of rough sleeping and the role of the council, particularly during periods of severe weather. We've acknowledged that. To recommend to Cabinet that proposed severe weather emergency protocol, SWEP, is adopted with immediate effect. Are we all happy with that, for this to be adopted with urgency? Yeah? Okay, can we move that? Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Tracy. Okay. Through them.
Thanks, Chair. There's 2 actions here, and those have been put in place following the last meeting. So if you're happy with that, we can move on to the work programme.
Happy? Yep. Right, we'll move into the work programme. You want to just take us through that, Hazel, please?
Yeah. Okay, your next meeting is the 12th of December, and that will be budget scrutiny. We've also got a performance report from Richard Jones. We're sort of trying to get into the habit of inviting the Cabinet member along to answer on the performance reporting. The style of reporting has changed for performance reporting. We no longer have to report on improvement objectives and outcome agreements. So it will be a shorter report, but we'd like to invite the Cabinet member and Julie Boothroyd for that report. But essentially your December meeting will be budget scrutiny, new for some of you, but some are old hat, Chair. I've been just advised by some officers that there's a special CYP select on the 26th of November, which is got an item on there, the Safeguarding Evaluative Report, and they'd like to invite members of this committee along to that meeting as well. So just for you to be aware that you'll probably get a sort of email invitation.
20, Richard? Right.
Well, that sort of ties in with my confusion then, because I thought that our special meeting was on the 13th. So there might be, there might be an issue there. I've just had an email from officers.
Additional one on the 13th of November.
Yes, that's the one I'm aware of. So if that... basically, we've been asked to extend the invitation to you, but I'm not sure at the moment whether that's correct, because I wasn't sure that we were taking a safeguarding report to that meeting. But if that is the case, you'll get an email advising you and inviting you to that meeting if you'd like to attend. It will be a special CYP, but if that item is to be added, then you'll be invited if you'd like to attend that meeting. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Could I just ask, on the budget side of it, it does get a little bit monotonous if some of you are sitting on other selects. I don't know what the process is going to be for this year's budget. We usually have mandates, so if we're going to find something's going to happen within a directorate, there'll be a mandate for it, and then each select then will pick up whatever that mandate falls in. So, i.e. when we talk about homelessness, if they're going to have the budget cut. I know it's a grant, but generally we may have an idea where that grant's going to be cut. That will come under, i.e. this committee. I've generally found over the years that adults, with their provision that we're protected. So generally you'll find within adult select, we generally don't have many mandates, but it may be that the mandates come under more, and let's say, strong communities. If it means that that is going to be the case, so instead of having 2 meetings, it may be within our interest to bring a meeting together, so we're not in and out all the time. So if you're open to that, I will look at that when the mandates come, and we'll have that discussion. I'll make sure Hazel emails you out the mandates which are relevant to this select committee, because it's important as well you understand, we have a better understanding of what we're doing here, whereas you go to some of the other selects, i.e. CYP, let's say, we may not be up to speed on some of their mandates, but I think that's important how we're going to categorise it, and you probably don't even know yet on the mandates how we're going to do it this year, do you? No.
Chair, I think we're going to have a budget report for each of the select committee, and the proposals will be split according to the relevance in terms of reference of your selects. But what we've also done in the past, which has been more useful, I suppose, in looking at the overarching whole, is in the new year to organise a special meeting of all of the selects together. So a joint select committee where we look at the whole set of proposals, so that we can ask questions more around how sort of monies are allocated across different service areas and directorates, rather than just looking at a single sort of aspect relating to services within your remit. So that will follow in the new year. We'll set up a special meeting for that. That's worked quite well in the past. We've had the cabinet members here sat along the front presenting their proposals and taking the questions from members around priorities, risks of allocating to one budget as opposed to another area. It's worked quite well previously, so we intend to do that this next year as well.
And if we don't have any mandates for adults, does that mean then, or one, are we going to still call a meeting if there's only one? Budget papers. Okay, so Val?
We're coming up to budget time again. I keep asking, please, can I have a list of our statutory duties? I know people will blithely nod and say, oh, there's over 600 of them, but we're looking at setting budgets. What are we actually required to do? How do you establish what's right and proper? So I'll be grateful for that sometime.
Mark Howcroft, Val, just email it. Mark Howcroft.
Chair will put it forward as an action.
Okay, the clerk will do it. All right.
Just for members to be aware that the weekly email is an update, things that have been added to the planner, perhaps timescales have changed, to be aware of that weekly email, because this is a live document. It changes every day, and obviously since you will have looked at it today, there will be future changes. So just keep an eye on the emails, and if you want to have sight of any report, you know, not necessarily brought forward to a meeting, you can ask for sight of a report, and you can then decide whether you'd like to bring it forward.
Okay, Roger.
It's only on a point of information. I'm looking at the bit of paper that I've printed out, and it goes back to the 1st of March 2017. What is the point, if you know what I mean, of having that there? I've got pages and pages of stuff that's totally irrelevant.
Chair, we have requested that actually the forward plan is just a forward plan and not a backward-looking plan. We have requested that, so we'll take that forward again. Just in in terms of clarity around the special meeting, I've just had an email from the officer to say, yes, the 26th is a mistake. It is the 13th, and there is an additional item to go on to that agenda, which is a safeguarding evaluation report. So due to the sort of overarching nature of the safeguarding report, it will sort of comprise adults and CYP aspects, so you will receive an invitation to attend the meeting on the 13th. Okay?
Can I just ask, Hazel, on the planner you've got the 22nd of November, review of fees and charges. Are there any fees and charges that we need to be looking at for Adult Select, i.e. for any of the services we supply out there which will come under us? Just bear that in mind. So your fees and charges, we generally have a range of about 2% increase. So that fees and charges will be car parking, will be your leisure centres, but there are services out there as well, like Careline, is it, where people have and all them little things will be on here, so you have to take note of that, see, because some may increase a lot more than what we have the threshold. And that would be the questions to ask. So just bear that in mind. That's the 22nd of November. So that document should be available very soon then. Yeah. Is that Joy? Fees and charges? So if you want to obtain the fees and charges increases for next financial year, just email Joy Robson. She should be able to supply that to you, okay? And if there's anything you pick up out of that, just let us know. Right, okay. So we'll go for the meeting on the December the 12th, the Tuesday, the budget meeting. There's an asterisk on it.
Yeah, and be aware we've got an invite.
Okay, and we've got the 13th invite for CYP. Okay, have a safe journey home, members. Thank you.